What's up, desktoppers? Xavier Wills here for Desktop Bodybuilding. In this video, I'm reacting to Fouad Abiad's solutions to making bodybuilding a safer sport. Are they good solutions? Are they bad solutions? You guys can let me know in the comments below as well on this. And we want to prevent deaths such as Cedric McMillan, Shawn Rhoden, George Peterson, and all the other ones we've seen over the past 12 to 24 months. Let me know what you think in the comments below about everything that I have to say and what Fouad has to say as well. Also, if you do like this content, please give this video a thumbs up, smash that like button, also subscribe and hit the notification bell button. That way you'll be notified of every video that goes up from myself, Xavier Wills at Desktop Bodybuilding. Anyway guys, on with the video.
She was killed, and they tried
the top
to
six
cover
girls
it up.
really look great, but you seem to have that perfect aesthetic.
I wasn't
look.
into hip hop or even soul music.
There are definitely people that need a little Viagra.
What's up, desktoppers? Let's get straight into this one. So I'm going to play some of what Fouad Abiad and the other guys, Nick Walker, also Ben Chow and Guy Sistinino had to say on the latest episode of Bro Chat on Fouad Abiad's channel. I'm going to play that and I'm going to react to it.
If we're going to solutions, I think there's a couple different ones. One of the easiest ones, and I think it could be implemented without too much disruption, but I don't know if people would go along with it. If all things are equal, usually the biggest guy is going to win. So muscularity is the biggest part of the triangle, is the base of it.
Yes and no, because you got guys like Hassan Mustafa last year, who was probably the biggest guy pound for pound on stage out of anyone. Even Big Ramy, you can debate that as well, because the amount of muscle he has on his legs, and he's not lacking muscle on his upper body whatsoever. He has a sort of narrow shoulder structure, but he's so muscular, and he didn't really go close to winning a show last year. He placed really well, almost qualified, or maybe he did qualify for the Olympia actually. I think he did just qualify in points, but he had to do a ton of shows to get that and to qualify in points. So yes and no. Obviously he was lacking conditioning, but it's not like he's way off either. So it depends on the contest, and I think that I agree. I mean, shape and structure should take precedence over, just straight out muscularity, because I love the physiques of the 90s, like even the early 90s as well, with your, Lee Labradas. Obviously you got your Lee Haney, who's winning the Mr. Olympia, and then later in the 90s, and I suppose still early in the 90s, but when they got a bit more mass as well, the Flex Wheelers, the Shawn Rays, the Kevin Lavronis. I mean, I loved all of those physiques. So I do agree with a lot of what Fouad Abiad's saying here.
In my opinion, if they switched that around and they made muscularity worth less points for the judges, and
more so
symmetry, proportions, and conditioning were worth more points.
Well, now I lose.
Well, you would have to change the way you train and shit. But I'm just saying,
you bring some nasty condition though.
Yeah,
so
yeah, you bring good condition too. So, but I'm just like,
so Nick does bring nasty conditioning, obviously, so that bit would not be an issue. But obviously, taking away the fact that muscularity is such a emphasis, at least for the judges, would definitely hurt his physique. If there's more emphasis on, I suppose you'd say structure, but shape and symmetry and aesthetics and all that sort of stuff, then that's definitely going to hurt Nick, no doubt.
I'm just saying, because then if you look at the Olympia, for example, then Ramy wouldn't be rewarded. Hottie might win, right? So it's like,
I'll keep my mouth
what?
shut.
Say what you're going to say. Say what you're going to say.
I think Hottie should have been a little higher than what he was.
Okay, regardless. I think anybody might agree.
There's a lot of people that would agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a ton of people, obviously, we heard last year, heaps of people wanted Hardy to win. His conditioning was the best out of that top three, no doubt. But Brandon Curry did bring an improved physique. He's improved every single year and looked fantastic. And Ramy was huge as ever, or very much close to it. I don't think that, necessarily Ramy was at his best, but I think Brandon Curry was pretty close to it. So you can make a case, though, no doubt, for the way Hardy looked. But Hardy obviously has the delt thing as well, and how much does they mark him down on that? Who knows? But at least that's Nick's opinion, but he should have at least been second, if not first.
But but do you see what I'm saying? So then, look at the examples throughout history. Like when Kevin Lavroni was up against Dorian Yates the first time, or when Flex Wheeler was against Dorian Yates, had they picked Kevin or Flex, muscularity wouldn't have been as important. Guys would have stayed a little smaller, worried about conditioning and symmetry.
And nobody would have argued it either.
That's right. And then if you go to like Ronnie Coleman, Flex Wheeler, if they had picked Flex Wheeler over Ronnie Coleman, well, maybe we wouldn't have gotten to the 2000 era where everybody was chasing Ronnie, right?
So that's a good point, because obviously if they had never rewarded, maybe Dorian Yates did deserve it, no doubt, early years, but once his physique got, bigger, and then you had guys contending with him like a Shawn Ray, then, maybe those guys should have, topped Dorian Yates back then if the judges had it that way. And like they said, no one would have really complained. So a lot of this does come down to the judging, but when you've got guys in front of you that come out on stage and they are freaky, I saw it in person with Branch Warren. I saw photos and I was like, he's missing this, he's got this torn up body part. Never was a big fan, but you see him in person, you just go, wow, like that is absolutely mind-blowing. And even you see it on the videos, but when you see it in person, it really does stand out on another level, because they're just cut from stone, especially when you're up close to these shows as well. And you get to see the guys that aren't quite, that look like a little bit watery or whatever. They're just not as impressive. So as a judge, it's very easy to get overwhelmed by the size, and two, by the conditioning and just the gnarliness overall. And that comes down to like vascularity and things like that. And Nick Walker obviously has that in spades as well.
So this leads me to my second solution that I'm sure is going to get fucking shit on by everybody.
But wait,
look, if you just got, if you just got rid of Classic, right, and just said, look, there's only bodybuilding, and they took all the Classic numbers, weights and heights, and increased them like 10 pounds. They said, that's it. That's the fucking show. That's bodybuilding.
Okay.
Hit me. Tell me what you're going to say.
What the fuck would my weight cap be?
Well,
buddy?
this is.
Thanks for asking, Nick. So I looked this up. So over 5'6" and up to and including 5'7", so that's 170 centimeters, up to and including 185 pounds or 84 kilograms. So Nick Walker at last year's Mr. Olympia was 245 pounds. So he's 60 pounds over the limit, or what would that be in kilos? Maybe 27 to 28 kilos. That is so much. So even if they, increased the weight limit from Classic up 10 pounds, he's only getting 195 pounds and he's still 50 pounds off that restriction. So even if they did it at 20, he's still 40 pounds off. It's still too much. And taking that amount of muscle off Nick Walker's physique, because of his structure, would not look better whatsoever. Nick Walker is a bodybuilder that looks better, bigger, because it makes his waist look smaller. If he's got more delts, he's got more lats, if he's got more muscle overall without blowing his waist out, which he's been able to achieve, and that's why he's gotten better and placed better, then if you just take that muscle away and you leave him with his structure, it's just not as good, because he has that wider hip structure, which Jay Cutler had. Many bodybuilders have it. And it's not really a slight on his physique when he's got the amount of muscle to make himself look more aesthetic. But some guys just don't look as good smaller.
My solution for you, buddy. So
this, I might as well throw in the
towel. This is my solution for you, Nick. Retire.
Yeah, you're fucked.
Yeah, I might as well just throw in the fucking towel.
No, I got a solution. I really do.
I'll go to not eat for a few months.
No, listen, I have a real solution. So let's say, no, take DNP and burn off some muscle. No, I'm serious.
That's the solution.
Let's say, you're 5'7"?
Yeah.
So let's say 5'7", and I'm just throwing out a number. Nobody fuck with me in the comments. If you're 5'7" and the weight cap is 215, say, right, in Classic. Let's say we bump that 10 pounds and now it's 225. That should be where it is.
So 225 is obviously a long way off where the Classic actual weight limit is. But you can see Nick Walker's face. He was just like, what? Because him being 225, cutting even 20 pounds would be huge for him.
He said exactly what I thought the solution would be.
Oh, I knew where you were going with that.
He said
I don't have an issue with that.
He said I would just sit around half the year. Perfect. Now your body is rest. No, I don't mean sit around, but now your body
still work out.
Yeah, but you're not going to work out as hard because you can't get any bigger. So you're
going to with as many drugs.
Or with as many drugs. So you're taking less PEDs. You're not training as hard. You're not eating as much because you can't get big. And now you're just honing your physique and making the detail and structure better. I mean, think about it.
I honestly think that's how majority of off season should be anyway.
Yeah, but that's how they would be if everybody had a cap.
I know it's an off season. This is the time to quote unquote grow.
Yeah,
but it's called an off season for a reason.
So Fouad makes a good point about honing your physique, but guys that are already big and then have to come right down, then I don't think they'll be able to hone their physique the same way. We saw, obviously, Regan Grimes did it as well. That was another guy that went from open to classic and just didn't do it as well, even though he's got a great structure and a great physique. But once you've already been big, I think it's hard to go back to that sort of classic weight, or even 10 pounds above it possibly as well. But Nick Walker mentions an off-season is sort of meant to be an off-season. We saw guys used to do this, and, you know, some guys still do. But we used to see Phil Heath. He used to come off, clearly. You could see him always posing that Pittsburgh show while he was Mr. Olympia, and he would always be one of the less impressive guys. We always saw Kai Green looked dramatically better than Phil Heath at that show, or that guest posing rather. So that was 16 weeks out, and we'd see him in his off-season, and Phil was, you know, he still had obviously some crazy forearms and the crazy arms, which was good for him at expos. He could still wear a singlet and not look, you know, small by his standards. But you could tell he just wasn't the same Phil Heath. He came off everything, or went down to a very low amount. He took some time off training and then went up to the Olympia. And he's able to win 7 Mr. Olympias doing that, and was probably a lot healthier for his body as well. Shawn Rhoden did the same thing, but Shawn Rhoden was obviously held out from competing for several years after he won that Mr. Olympia. But he used to clearly come off everything. He used to obviously add a little bit extra body fat than Phil Heath, so I think that's a little bit more unhealthy. But if he's able to, you know, come off and do all that sort of stuff, why can't these bodybuilders do it now? Ronnie Coleman even took 3 months off training after he won the Mr. Olympias as well, and probably cleaned out his body as well, even though he was one of the bigger guys. And I still think obviously not healthy being whatever weight he used to obviously get up to, but still these guys did come off. And it seems now with, you know, social media pressures as well, that everyone seems to stay on longer and wants to stay big all the time, which I think is a big danger.
I think it's the exposure.
I do agree with Ben on that.
Like, the exposure is just crazy. Especially for an amateur.
Well, my only argument to what Fouad said was that you start chasing conditioning, that could be an issue too.
But think about the positives versus the negatives, right?
I agree.
That's also true, but
I agree.
Go ahead, Nick.
I think size is more of a dangerous route.
Well, the reason I agree with Guy is people are going to maybe take more diuretics to get to a certain weight, blah, blah, blah. I agree with that. That's a problem. I don't think we're ever going to get rid of all the risks, right?
So great point by Guy Sistanino as well. And this is exactly what I was thinking too, because guys are going to try to shoot up, just say their weight limit's 220 pounds. They're going to try to sort of get towards that 235 pounds and then just diuretic down and just suffer down and stop eating food and try to get down to that 220, because then they can try to fill back up depending how long, obviously, before. Classic, it varies too. They can sometimes have the weigh-in a day out. They can have it 2 days out. They can have it the morning of the comp. And it doesn't give these guys a consistent sort of, I suppose, protocol for actually carving back up. And obviously classic, these guys aren't as heavy as well, so they're not putting themselves through as much stress and strain in the off season as the open pro bodybuilders. So if open pro bodybuilders had a bit extra weight to play with, and obviously these classic guys had extra weight to play with, then they could be shooting up to a much higher weight and suffering to get that. And that's, you know, more acutely dangerous than the overall being heavy for a long period of time in the off season. So this is where I don't like the weight cap as much. And I think open pro bodybuilders are more extreme. They're willing to do generally more extreme things than some of these classic guys, because I think some of these classic guys could move into open, but they're comfortable in classic. They're doing well in classic. They like classic more, and really it's a long way to go from classic to open in many cases. I think it's, you know, years of more training and years off the stage really, unless they want to compete and sort of just go top 10 or top 5 at some smaller shows maybe. But many of these guys, if they're near the top or doing well in classic, they want to, you know, obviously do really well in open to make that jump. So I think that a lot of the open guys are maybe willing to do more extreme things. We saw it with Regan Grimes when he went down to classic. He had to suffer down like 20 odd pounds, which I'm sure was not healthy for him whatsoever. But he did it. He did it, made weight, but still didn't do amazingly well at the Olympia. Don't get me wrong, I think he's top 10 still anyway, but still, I just want to sort of point that out, that acutely we could see more deaths around the contest time. I've seen crazy things backstage of guys that you could tell were over diuretics that are trying to weigh in and all that sort of stuff, and I definitely don't want to see that as well.
But I think judging just by what Nick said organically, I didn't prod him, he just said it. Yeah. He's going to take less gear and he's going to eat less and he's going to take a break.
Well, even like I've always wondered, like now, what if we still ate a lot of food, trained hard, and just barely took anything?
Yeah.
But I mean, even like, okay, here's.
I almost feel like to a degree, bodies might even respond better in the off season. Honestly.
It would be an interesting experiment if these guys literally went down to doing, I don't know, 2-3 mil of gear a week or something, and a small dose of, you know, whatever else they want to do, you know, GH or whatever, and just they cut out the insulin. It'd be interesting to see if these guys put in the same amount of effort, what their physiques would do. Would they be just as good? Would they be 10% off? Would they be 20% off? Let me know what you think in the comments below on that.
I mean, look at that.
Yeah.
Versus that. Right?
That looks horrible. Oh, dude, you make me want to like shrink.
Shrink, do it. Lead the way, Nick.
Oh, that's tripping me out.
I honestly feel like a lot of people will look for me to do shit like that. So now I almost feel like I have to.
Whoa. Okay. So Nick sort of feels like he has to actually shrink, and it makes him not want to be big. So there is probably a lot of stuff going through Nick Walker's head right now. He's obviously one of the best in the world in terms of bodybuilding. This is like sort of mind-blowing, but he's actually saying something like this. Will it be in a few days? He goes, nah, who cares? I'm pushing this. I want to be Mr. Olympia. The goal is bigger than the risk, you know what I mean? Or the goal justifies the risk, or whatever way you want to put it, because many people in his same situation, the goal would justify the risk, you know, because obviously there is a risk to all these guys being big. I've heard Ian Valier talk about it recently, and he sleeps like 14 hours or 12 hours a day or something, and he said he's just like tired and exhausted just from being so big and heavy, and you can see it as well. He's breathing heavier, and he's, you know, these guys struggle to sleep well, which obviously has an impact on their health, and it's pretty crazy. So, I mean, if Nick Walker makes a move and tries to come in smaller, or if he, you know, stands up and says, I want this to be a rule change, and it seems like he's pretty supportive of it in this video. I mean, let me know what you think it would do to the bodybuilding industry.
If we keep,
and this is coming from, you know, a top level pro here that competes, you know, and this, I think it's a smarter route.
Say what you're gonna say, Ben.
I said we keep sweeping it under the carpet. It's not gonna. It's only gonna get worse.
It's gonna get worse. It is.
Nick, I'm glad you're on here, because, you know, originally I thought to myself, you know, maybe I'll have Nick on a different one, because I didn't want to like make you feel off because we're talking about.
No, I think this is something that needs to be discussed.
But I'm actually happy that you're on now, because as somebody who's actually 300 pounds or close to it and actually is in the sport, how would you feel if honestly they were like, hey, Nick, this is what
I would be okay with it, because I'll tell you, just like Jay Cutler used to say, I didn't plan on being this big.
So that's crazy to me that Nick's actually okay with this. I mean, good on him. Like, the fact that he's saying this, and it might be a negative on his career if these sort of rules were implemented, I think it's a credit to him. And I think that the fact that he's able to be honest about that, I think is incredible. Because many of the smaller guys would be saying, this is great, this is awesome, like this is what should happen if they're at least competitive and are pros or whatever. And a lot of the bigger guys are going to be saying, hey, no way, because, you know, they get paid based on their, obviously their placings, their exposure and all that sort of stuff. And if they start to go down based on rule changes, it hurts them financially and obviously legacy-wise as well. So credit to him.
People.
So a couple of things I want to address that were said to me from Paul. Paul and a couple other people said some stuff. I just want to address them because I know someone else is thinking it.
Shout out to Paul.
Shout out to Paul. So Paul said, well, somebody else will just start a federation where it's unlimited and guys can get as jacked as they want.
No.
And I'm like, okay, wait, let's say that did happen. To me, that federation will suffer the consequences of people being unhealthy or passing away or whatever. The IFBB is the standard. So the IFBB has to lead the way. And if there's other federations that do that shit, that's fine, right? Like,
there's only one fucking federation.
No, but it's kind of like, look, there's UFC, right? Listen, there's UFC, and then there's bare knuckle fighting. Bare knuckle fighting is cool to watch, but the UFC is always going to be the fucking top dog.
I don't think this is the best example, but I see what Fouad's definitely getting at here. I think that he thinks that obviously the IFBB, everyone will follow what they're doing. But just say, for example, someone that is a billionaire, like a Jake Wood, or someone who, you know, is maybe even more well off, which Jake Wood's obviously loaded as well. He bought the Mr. Olympia, for God's sakes, and still has plenty of money left over, I'm sure. But if someone comes and buys, you know, creates a federation, more like it, creates another federation, and they're paying, just say, $2 million for first place in their premier contest, whatever they want to call it, Mr. World or whatever they want to call it. They're paying that. They're giving out endorsement deals. They're saying, come over here, sign with us. We'll give you $250,000 a year as a base salary. And then you can do these contests. The smaller contests are paying 40 grand, 50 grand. And then the big dog contests, you got $500,000 at this one and $2 million at the big dog. That would be hard for a lot of bodybuilders to turn down, especially if they start penalizing guys that are bigger, or just not rewarding it, or setting a weight limit where these guys just can't compete at their best. But they could say, this federation over here, where I can still compete, still do well, where I'm not doing well in the IFBB, they're letting me compete. They're letting me do this. I can be a millionaire. I can make, $500,000 a year or $250,000 a year when potentially they're not making anything. So that is definitely a risk. And even though the IFBB is the top dog, and no doubt, and I think they'll stay the top dog, I don't think they'll implement anything as extreme that maybe Fouad's sort of suggesting, at least in his second solution to this whole thing. And I think, no doubt, there has to be a solution. There has to be something implemented. I think the IFBB, Mr. Olympia, the Arnold Classic, they all need to speak out on this and say, hey, look, we're aware of this. We're aware that there has been a lot of deaths in bodybuilding, a lot, and it's a lot more than the past as well. I don't think it's just exposure from social media, but in fact, we're seeing everyone, because we've had a Mr. Olympia pass away. We've had an Arnold Classic champion, and recent Mr. Olympias and recent Arnold Classic champions pass away. Your 2018 Mr. Olympia and your 2017 Arnold Classic champion. It's not okay. It's not something we can just ignore. If this was happening to NFL players, they all started dropping dead all of a sudden, what would be said? Would the federation say nothing? Would they sit back and say absolutely nothing about it? Because that's what it seems like is happening right now. And I totally agree. Fouad, the fact that he's throwing solutions out there, credit to him, because it needs to happen. There needs to be something implemented, whether it is a weight cap, whether it is drug testing, whether it is health checks, whether it is all this sort of stuff. Anything will help. Start with the smallest thing first. Literally, start with the smallest thing. Say, okay, well, you need to get bloods and at least submit them to us. And if there's something crazy on there, in terms of your blood work, just start with the crazy. Like, if this is like, whoa, dude, if you push this, you're probably going to die in this prep. Cedric McMillan, I believe he was doing cardio when this happened. I actually heard it on this podcast. And he was apparently intending to compete. It's just, with his health issues that he was having, had this actual testing been implemented, maybe Cedric would be alive now. And I just don't want to see these dudes that, incredible bodybuilders, but also parents. Cedric was a father. Shawn Rhoden was a father. Like, do we need to see more families broken in this way? I don't want to see it anymore. I'm sure you guys don't want to see it anymore. There needs to be something done. I don't know what that thing is. I mean, I've got ideas myself. I think the, mandatory blood tests or some sort of testing like that needs to be implemented. Perhaps I think Fouad is right. I think we should reward the shape, the symmetry, the structure, things like that, more so than we're just rewarding sheer muscle mass. Guys like, the big guys like a Morgan Asti, who doesn't have great shape and things like that, he might have a really tough time, because while he has great conditioning, while he has a certain amount of muscle mass, and those things should still be rewarded to an extent, I think the symmetry and the structure, the posing, all needs to come back into bodybuilding. I think Arnold was on the right track when he brought in for posing to actually be judged at the Arnold Classic. Whether that's really judged that well or not, or whether it's just they're just giving it to the best physique, I think it should be a sort of combination between the best physique and the best routine. That's my opinion. At least how that's judged, how they're displaying the physique not only, but also just how entertaining and how the routine sort of is. I think that should be part of that judging, because the fans want to be entertained, don't they? I mean, I want to be entertained. I love going to these contests and seeing cool posing routines. If someone comes out, just hits a couple most musculars and it's not an entertaining routine, they look awkward, they're not having fun with it, all that sort of stuff, you might go, oh yeah, he's pretty impressive. But you watch Classic Physique, it's incredible. Like, their posing routines are next level. And I love it. And that's why people are drawn to Classic Physique. So it's the physiques that look amazing. They have great shape. People, it's more, I suppose, attainable, even though it is unattainable for most people. But they're entertaining. Their posing routines are entertaining. They have more charisma. They have all this sort of stuff. And I want to see this brought out from the IFB Pro big bodybuilders in the open class. But let me know what you think in the comments below on all of this, what Fouad Abiad had to say, what I have to say, and what you think should actually happen. And I just want to say rest in peace to Cedric McMillan, because I didn't do a reaction video to him passing. I actually, it was like 3 in the morning for me, and I saw it, and I was, you know, just like I was tired, I was up in my feelings about it, and I was like sitting there in front of my computer about to go live on YouTube to talk about it and show some of his posing routine and things like that. But I just felt like there was people that knew him better. I hardly knew Cedric. I only met him a couple times and I think messaged a few times, and that was about it. So I felt like maybe I wasn't going to do that justice. You know, you got people like, obviously, you got RX Muscle, you got all these other websites that have interviewed him multiple times, know more about him. And while I'd watched all his interviews and things like that, I just didn't feel it was maybe my place to put a video up in that scenario. Even if I put a news one out, it still could have been fine and respectful and all that sort of stuff. But I just felt like there was already enough out there. But I wanted to do this because it is important. We can make change. And I just wanted to say as well, if there is a GoFundMe that goes up from Cedric's family, please donate to it, because he has, you know, a wife, he has kids, and he was obviously working in the military and doing bodybuilding and probably making a good income as well, that they won't have anymore. So yeah, if there's a GoFundMe that goes up, I will post about it. I will put it on my YouTube community tab. I will put it I will actually edit this and put it in the comments below. So there might be one actually in there as well. And if not, I'll just actually reach out to his wife as well and ask if there's anything I can do or we can do or anything like that to help out the scenario, because it obviously, you know, while we're talking about these health issues and trying to prevent it for, you know, the future for bodybuilders, there is a family right now that's mourning and having a really tough time. And just thinking about that, being a dad myself, it absolutely breaks my heart. And the thought that, you know, that they're going to be growing up the rest of their lives without a father, just, yeah, it's truly, truly heartbreaking. So my heart goes out to his family, his friends, and everyone that knew Cedric as well. So that's it for this video. I do need to mention as well, HD Muscle, head to hdmuscle.com, enter the code desktop, you'll save yourself 10% on some amazing supplements. Check them out. I say it every time. Look at the ingredients list. Don't take my word for it. And look what sort of athletes they work with. Quentin Araya, they've got a ton of top names under their belt. And, you know, they have great products. And obviously made by bodybuilders for bodybuilders as well, with Dorian Hamilton being one of the owners over there. So that's it for this video. If you guys like and appreciate this content, please give this video a thumbs up. Smash that like button. Also subscribe and hit the notification bell button. That way you'll be notified of every video that goes up from myself, Xavier Wills at Desktop Bodybuilding. So that's it for me. For Xavier Wills, Desktop Bodybuilding, we are out.